Okay, good afternoon, students.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Musulman.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon.
ma'am.
Georgian, you are not audible. Like I can barely hear you. Anyway, so we were supposed to discuss your concerns and your problems with Marxist anthropology and ecology. And then if you have any other questions, then what I'll request you to do is that I want you to post your questions in the chat right now so that I can go on answering one after the other so we can wrap up the session in the next 40 minutes or so, if it's fine by you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead with your questions and let me know, or should I begin with Marxism first?
I think you begin with Marxism and advanced communism, ma'am.
Okay, okay, all right. So the thing is that first of all, I would just say that you need to understand Marxism in the simplest way possible, right? You need to first understand what Marxism means, and then we can probably connect Marxism with ecology or the economics of ecology and move ahead from there. Okay, so as you can understand, when we talk about Marxism, then we talk about few things that I just a moment. Okay. So one of the things that you need to understand is what is Marxist theory, and I will just briefly begin with what is Marxist theory, and then I will move ahead with how it relates to economy, and then how this economy can be translated into understanding Marxism and its correlation to ecology. Because again, in terms of ecology, we need to take into consideration materialism and we need to take into consideration economics. Okay. So first of all, please understand that there are two primary ideas that we need to understand with regard to Marxism. One, how society works and how society was represented historically by Marx, and second is the role of capitalism and how Karl Marx critique the whole idea of capitalism. So when we talk about the theory of society, then in the theory of society, Karl Marx talked about how society worked, how and why society became the way it was, and why did capitalism became the most preferred way of earning a livelihood. Okay, so one of the things that you need to understand is that when we are talking about how society works, Karl Marx very simply came up with a dual division of society. He said that the society would always have a master and a slave kind of a relationship, a landlord and a land laborer. So the earliest of the relationships, when we go to historical times and when we go to medieval ages and ancient ages, we find the whole idea of master and slave. Then it went on to as we know it as landlords and land laborers, and then in the industrial era, the same thing became all about industrial industrialists and their factory workers. Okay, so according to Karl Marx, the thing was that capitalism was extremely undesirable to him. Capitalism was extremely undesirable, but he said that capitalism in many ways promoted the historical notions of master and slave. So this is something which the feature of the duality of society was highlighted by him, and this feature of duality was where, you know, there was a relationship between the exploiter and the exploited. Okay, so in case of master and slave, you will find that the master and the slave obviously again share the exploited and exploited relationship, or the landlord and land laborer, same relationship. In India's case, the zamindari system was a reflection of landlord and land laborer. Then we have the whole system of the industrialist or the factory owner and the factory workers. Most of the time you will see that a truly capitalist society will have uh, no inhibitions in limiting the rights of the workers working under them, and it is very exploitative in nature. Okay, now if we try to think of capitalism, then you will understand that capitalism also led to the rise of, sorry, industrialism led to the rise of the middle class. Now this middle class was like a third class which came out. So the society had two classes, the exploiter and the exploited, but then came the middle class. Okay, and this middle class was the third category which worked like the exploited but had ambitions and aspirations similar to that of the landowner. Okay, now I hope I have simplified and broken down the society for all of you and how the society has been since then. Okay, now there were many, whenever we talk about Marxist anthropology or whenever we talk about Karl Marx or Marxism, we almost always assume that Karl Marx is the only person who theorized Marxism, but you are wrong. There were other contributors to the Marxist ideals like Friedrich Engels, Lenin, and so on and so forth. Now Marx argued that the economic situation could be divided into two categories, the substructure and the superstructure. The substructure is the form of productive system. Okay, and it is the most important. See, understand, the economic situation of any society can be divided into substructure and superstructure of the society. The substructure is the form of productive system which determines every other aspect of the society, including its social institutions, its organization, the systems of law, and morality and education. Together they make something that we call as how do I say, superstructure. Are you getting my point?
Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
just to confirm, substructure
Ma'am, no.
determines all the institutions of society, and that forms the superstructure. So it's like connected. Both the
Yes, just a moment. Let me just see if I can find a representation.
Ma'am, before that, I have a question.
Just a moment, just a
Okay.
moment. Okay. There is a small introduction to Marxism. It's a small video of 4 minutes. Let me just share it with all of you. and let's see if that clarifies your doubts, and then we shall proceed from there. Okay. Let me know if it is.
Marxism is a theory based on the ideas of the philosopher Karl Marx. Marx was born in Germany in 1818 and died in London in 1883. He's buried in Highgate Cemetery in North London. Marxism is what is known as a conflict theory because it states that society is in conflict with each other, and Marxism claims that this conflict is between the rich and the poor. Now, Marxism as we understand it as sociologists is a political and economic philosophy, a view of the way things are now, and suggestions as to where society is headed. The danger is that we start to view it based on what we understand about its relationship to communism and the politics and oppression of the old Soviet Union. Marx never saw communism in this way. He saw it as liberation and as a leveler, a way of creating a fairer society and of a way of getting the best out of all people, not just those with money and power. To really understand Marxism, we need to start with its opposite, capitalism. Capitalism represents the type of society you and I live in today. In Marx's terms, it's an economic system based on private ownership of the means of production. What this means is that our society today is based on a few people who own factories, businesses, shops, and other corporations. These corporations aren't owned by the people who work for them, the employees, or jointly by the employees and the owners, but by the owners only. Marx was formulating his theories during the Industrial Revolution, a time when Britain and other countries were going through a very dramatic change. The old feudal system, when lords of the manor owned the land, meant that the ordinary people had freedom and rights to all land. It was held in common. When the government passed a number of enclosure acts in the 1700s and 1800s, ordinary people no longer had the right to live on this land, and many of them were forced to pack up and move to the towns and the cities, which were beginning to grow due to the increase in factories and textile mills. Whereas previously people were free to keep their own animals and grow their own crops on common land, once they reached the cities, they had to find work in the factories, in the employment of the factory owners. The work was hard and often dangerous, and the pay was very poor. Many factory owners didn't want to pay high wages because this would mean less profit for them, so children were often used as cheap labour. The Industrial Revolution promoted a capitalist way of thinking, what we call a capitalist ideology, and also created two distinct groups of people. The factory owners, who were middle class, Marx called these the bourgeoisie, and the workers, or working class, Marx called these the proletariat. Marx was on the side of the proletariat because he saw them as being treated unfairly by the factory owners. Not only did Marx see them as being treated unfairly or being oppressed, he also saw the system as one that tried very hard to make sure that the poor stayed poor and the rich continued to get richer. So Marxism views capitalist society as being based on a system that encourages inequality, because the rich will always need someone to do the work they don't want to do. It's called a conflict theory because society is in conflict, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie. However, Marx also suggested that at some point the working class would realise that they had the power to change things. Through education and personal development, some members of the proletariat would begin to understand the system better and devise ways of changing it. Marx believed that such radical change could only come about through revolution, when the workers rise up and overthrow those who were treating them unfairly. In place of capitalism, a new system would be established in which all people were treated equally and all the factories and businesses were owned by everyone. In other words, they were communally owned. Marx called this system communism.
Yes. Was it clear to all of you now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
I just need clarification in one thing.
Sorry?
Ma'am, I just need clarification in one thing.
Yes, please go
so,
ahead.
We when you talked about the idea of Marxism and how it is based on the relationship of the exploiter and the exploited,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you highlighted the example of zamindars and the workers, and during these exchanges, a separate division emerged, which was called middle class.
Mm-hmm.
But in this video, the middle class was
Yes,
portrayed
so
as
yeah,
the
just a second. I can understand, Jay, what I'm trying to say, and I will clarify that to you.
yes,
What I was trying to say to you was that this middle class was often a class that was a result of protests, that was a result of, overthrowing of the aristocrats. Okay, in today's times what you will find is that the same middle class which was traditionally not the sorry the zamindar, or not traditionally the landowner, in today's times they are the ones who have become the perpetrators of the same kind of exploitation which the aristocrats or the nobles were known to do. Are you getting
okay,
my point?
yes,
So
ma'am.
the third class that came because they had achieved some form of financial stability by by doing things like trading, by being the middleman for the exploiter and exploited, and therefore there was a phase which was known as the rise of the middle class. Okay, there was a phase that was titled that, and this middle class was as aspirational as the industrial class. But you must understand that this particular middle class was aspirational like the industrialist, but this middle class was not opposed to working like the working class also. Okay, so they will set an example for the working class by being those people who will not say ki, okay, so I now shift to the vernaculars to localize the example, and I will sort of try to give you some more contextual examples, like expecting, suppose let us just take the example of Tata. Okay, you know he's an industrialist. Okay, and you know that he is a Parsi. Okay, now when the Parsis came to India in Gujarat, they were not really nobility, or they were not looked at as nobility. As you can understand, they were not aristocrats, they were not industrialists, and they were not the people who in any way could be considered superior than anyone else in the community that they came asking for help. Essentially, they were refugees. Okay, they had run away from the erstwhile Persia, or as we know, Iran today. The erstwhile Persian community of the Parsis or the Zoroastrians came to India. By the way, they are known as Parsis only in India, otherwise, in the rest of the world, they are known as Zoroastrians. So what I'm trying to say is, because they came from Persia, the king of Gujarat named them Parsis, and they requested refuge and asylum in India, and they said that we will never be a hindrance to you. However, we will not overthrow and forget our religion, and we will continue to be loyal to our religious affiliation, that is Zoroastrianism. But other than that, our women, we will speak your language, and our women and our men will wear your clothes. However, the headdress will not go away. Okay, now this community suddenly is now the owner of maximum resources in India, and Tata is not the only example. There are several. There are several Parsi industrialists in India who slowly rose from a essentially middle class setup. So their aspirations were very similar to that of the aristocracy, but at the same time they were not aristocrats. Now aristocrats or the zamindars were generally traditionally noble people, and it was in many ways against their honor and prestige. Shan khilafi jisko hum bolte hain, it was against their shan to work in the field. However, a Parsi was not opposed to working in the field also, but had the aspirations of becoming like the aristocrat. So keeping that in mind, when the third class of middle class came, this was the class which was not in any way considering it against their prestige or honor to work just like any other working class. However, they had the mindset and the aspirations to rise above the working class situation. They did that by educating themselves, by gaining more experience and more knowledge. Now, as you can understand, when they became the factory owners and when they become the industrial owners, they are essentially doing that which the aristocrat was doing. Are you getting my point, all of you? They're essentially doing that which the aristocrat was doing. So they opposed the aristocrat for being the exploiter, but at the same time, when they gained the resources, they have become equally exploitative in their principles. Are you getting my point? So an industrialist, so even when they reached the top, it did not result in any kind of communism. It rather resulted in capitalism. Are you getting my point? And capitalism gave rise to several problems and enhanced the hierarchical nature of the society. Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I just want to ask,
Yes, ma'am.
we say that capitalism was in a way inevitable
Why
because
would you, why would you say that?
people would always have that that want to go to the top level. Like before this, like we said, there was when there was the system of monarchy, there was system of landowners and the slaves, right? But capitalism actually provided a gateway for those people who weren't able to come up, a kind of a gateway for them to move up the class, right? So in a way, didn't I mean it has its own negative side, but समवेयर मतलब कभी तो मैम मतलब होता है ना एक अंदर से ही मतलब ह्यूमन नेचर में भी कि वी हैव टू कम अप.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. That's what I was saying. That aspiration of the middle class also supported capitalism, but capitalism would result in the same historical setup of exploiter and exploited master and slave was something which nobody could foresee. Now Karl Marx could foresee that, and therefore he came up with this utopian idea of communism, okay, where the society was going to be classless. However, there are so many criticisms for the Marxist theory, okay. There are so many. Like Georgian, when you are talking, you are also talking about a common criticism of Marxism and communism, where you are saying that the relationship of everybody cannot be devoid of hierarchy and cannot be devoid of divisions, because social divisions have survived longer than communism or the idea of Marxism, and in some way or the other they have been promoted by any means possible. So it is actually something, and please don't think that communism or Marxism has not been criticized. It has been immensely critiqued, and it has been immensely criticized for coming up with an idea which was dreamlike. Okay, when I say utopian, I mean that it was something which is too perfect. A society which is classless, it is too perfect to expect that kind of society. Are you getting my point? So yes, the aspirations and all are there, but as I'm telling you, if zamindari system gave rise to bonded labor, then industrialism, as you just saw in the video in a very brief manner, it has given rise to child labor and several other problems in the society also, because you try to find those workers who do not have a voice. Okay, that is the feature of capitalism. There are many other features, one of the features being that the amount of effort that you're getting putting in some work, you are going to get only 1/3 wage against that work. But in your mind, you have been conditioned to believe that the amount of money that you're getting is what you deserve. Yes, Vasundhara.
Ma'am, first question is, were you lowering my hand?
No, I wasn't. No, I
So,
can't.
ma'am, I was raising my hand, somebody was lowering my hand. That is
No,
one
no,
thing.
no. Now it can't be done, Vasundhara. There must be some technical problem because now it can't be done.
Ma'am, because on my end, I see that nobody is an attendee in this meeting. I don't see anybody an attendee.
Okay, okay, okay. What is your other question?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to go back before all of this to where we were discussing about superstructure. So, ma'am, I read it somewhere, not somewhere. I was actually reading a book that I found on ecology. So, it says that cultural materialism by Marvin Harris was the like Marvin Harris gave these three levels of social systems where he talked about infrastructure, structure, and superstructure.
Hmm.
The other thing that you were describing just now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have discussed this when, like, while we were talking about Marxism. So, just to verify that, just to verify my sources, is this concept included in Marxism or cultural materialism? Like
Both,
the I
both.
both.
Please understand that there are no distinct boundaries here. You
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
this whole idea of materialism can go back to many other philosophers also. You will find Karl Marx discussing and developing over it. You will find Hegel developing over it. You will find Marvin Harris developing over it. So there are several people, okay, who would be contributing to this because they all have their own interpretation. Okay, so according to Marx, the economics was the central substructure which led to the superstructure of the society. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it wasn't like just a moment. Yeah, this is also something I wanted to show you. Can you see this?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
At the top, as you can see, is the bag of money. Then we rule you is aristocracy, and we fool you is again religion. We shoot you is um, you know, people who have been there to defend aristocracy and religious leaders. We eat for you is the middle class, and we work for all and we feed all is the working class. Can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So, a lot of people believe that when an individual is growing up, at some point in their life, they are actually Marxist because they believe that everyone, there should be no caste based hierarchy, there should be no social division, and that everyone should be equal. Okay, so that is what I was talking about, that this theory of Marxism has been critiqued. Okay, however, what Karl Marx did was that he drew attention to the aspect of materialism, to the aspect of division of labor, to the aspect of economics, and how relevant it was that other institutions were actually working, okay, around this system and forming the structure of the society, which we know as the superstructure, forming the structure of the society as it was. Whether you were driven by anything, at the end, according to Karl Marx, it was the economics of this. Okay, it was the uh, monetary benefit of the financial structure, substructure. Like when you will look at, and that is why this is the conflict theory, when you will look at religious conflict, when you will look at communalism, when you will look at any problem that is coming up, if you go to the root of those problems, you will find that there are economic and financial motives somewhere hidden in those problems, in those issues and concerns that come up. Okay, and that is why we often say that religion is a business, or we often say politics is a business, we often say everything is a business. Okay, so somewhere what he was trying to say is that when we talk about the substructure of economics, then we realize that it is this substructure which determines the larger picture of the society, and this larger picture of the society contains morality, ethics. How far are you willing to compromise on your values and on your ethics in doing something? While doing something, are you ready to clear an entire forest only because in the market you require a automobile, maybe superiority, or you want superiority in the mobile company race or in the automobile industry race? So where exactly are you prioritizing your law, your morality, your ethics, and your values? These are very important things. And what he was trying to say, Karl Marx was trying to say, was that economics was a driving force in all of these aspects of the society. How does a society, if you keep, suppose if you keep one community of working class too deprived, too oppressed, crime is going to rise. Obviously, like right now, if we take the example of the situation of unemployment that is there, the dire circumstances that the pandemic has created, magnified by the economic crisis, magnified by the prolonged more than 2 decades of unemployment and underemployment, what has it led to? It has led to youth being misled by various ideas. Okay, youth being misled with a couple of ideas, and those ideas will always give rise to conflict in the society, because people do not have jobs, people do not have employment, and when they do not have employment, they are in dire need. There is paucity of means and livelihood means, and therefore they would be willing to compromise on their morality and ethics. Again, at the basis of this you will find economics. Are you getting my point, all of you?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
in a way,
Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am.
so
promotes.
we can conclude. Okay,
Yeah.
Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, I
Can
was
you
just
please?
I wanted to ask if communism in a way promotes subsistence economy.
um,
Because if we look at in an economic perspective, I think capitalism promotes this idea of continuous growth. Growth is constant. It's like growth can never stop. But communism actually promotes a more sustainable idea, I think, where you need not run after there's nothing to achieve. There's no top class where you have to reach. You can stay where you are and live a comfortable life, maybe comfortable in the sense you could just enough. That.
Yeah, you can say that it doesn't run after a surplus economy. Yes, you can say that it doesn't run after a surplus economy, and that it seems more feasible for the environment as well as for the people. However, the competition of the resources only happens when there is overpopulation and competition for resources. Are you getting my point? So sometimes capitalism seems more favorable than communism, advanced communism, only because, you know, it is a lofty idea when you have too many mouths to feed and limited resources. Okay, if we are being very realistic, then too many mouths to feed and limited resources means that it will give rise to capitalism. Communism can only be possible if the number of people and the ratio of them with regard to resources is at a balance. Then yes, you can afford, like Bhutan can afford to be a happy country, and it can afford to be can afford to have a negative footprint. Okay, carbon footprint. But can India do that? No, we cannot replicate the whole idea of Bhutan, because Bhutan has such few such limited population that the resource shortage is not there, and therefore they can remain happy with the amount of surplus that they already have naturally available to them. So they don't really need to be an industrial giant. However, in our scenario, what happens is there is extreme resource shortage, which is magnified by several of our policies and faulty policy structure and policy framework. And then there are several other things, and that is why you will find that clearing of forest, making more houses, all of these things become an inevitable reality only because these things cannot be avoided. Jay, you were asking something.
Ma'am, I only wanted to just ask about materialism. Like from all that we have talked about, one thing that I can find common in everything is that the material aspect of any society will give rise to either the communism or the um capitalism. So, is it the difference in the outlook of materialism that causes this, or something else?
So I just now told you that there is the idea of production of resources. Okay. So when you read about Marxism, you will find that there is a lot of correlation between what leads to production, okay, and how that leads to a change in the society. Okay. So production is something, that's what Georgian was also saying, that surplus economy and subsistence economy, what is the difference? The difference is that if the resources, and again I will give you a very basic example. Suppose you look at a tribal community. The tribal community can afford to be subsistent with regard to their approach only because the forest has plenty of animals. They don't have any fear for the future. The forest is providing several game animals to the people. Okay. Since their health care issues are not a matter of concern, because most of the time they attribute their health concerns to some kind of spiritual and supernatural powers, so many times their life expectancy is less than other people. Okay. There are a lot of theories that can complicate this matter, but I will very simply tell you that if you know that you're going to survive for say 60, 70 years or maybe 100 years, depending on your totemic power and depending on your religious power and all of those things, then you really have no fear about the future, and you really have no fear about how you're going to feed your family, because the forest is naturally available and is replenishing itself, and you are doing nothing destructive to the forest, and therefore the resources are coming in a regular supply to you. Okay. So the fear for future is not there. However, when you are in an urban setup where there is, again let us take the example of binge purchases that took place when the pandemic lockdown was announced. There was scramble for Africa. There was a fight for every single thing, and there was so much of coverage on the news channels regarding toilet papers being emptied from malls in America and in other European nations. So do you think they were actually thinking about the next person and how that next person was going to deal with something so crucial? No, nobody was. So the morality, ethics and values that I was talking about was actually not the concern there. The concern was that my family, if I have 4 children, then my 4 children, I and my partner, all 6 of us, or if there are any other adult members, we should have plenty of toilet papers to survive us through the lockdown. It was not a matter of concern how the other person is going to survive, because we have constantly been brought up in a situation where we know paucity of resources is a reality. So of course how we look at production and how we look at material is something which governs our society and social changes. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some links with all of you. You can read those links on Marxism, and you can see how the forces of production, the division of labor, are some of the things that made Marxism the way we know it. And so when I talk about materialism, and when I relate it to ecology, I hope now you are able to understand how environment plays a crucial role in understanding what materialism is and how environment plays a crucial role in determining uh, you know our resource shortage or our resource surplus. How do we look at it? Like the other day, I had discussed with all of you, and you people were telling, you people, I think Dipanshi only commented, and I agree with it, that when you clear forest and then even if you plant saplings 3 times the number of trees that you have cleared, it will take 50 years for those saplings to actually become capable of the same kind of oxygen which this forest was capable of. Okay, but based on the need of need of transport, metro had to be made. It became inevitable for the roads to remain unclogged with the number of immigrations and the number of migrants we had in Delhi NCR. Okay, so as a result of that, the inevitability of clearing the forest was something which was a reality staring us in the face, and therefore these decisions with regard to alternative forms of transport had to be taken. But of course, it does give rise to a vicious circle of exploitation of resources and exploitation of people in general. Yes, Vasundhara.
Ma'am, I just want to ask one question. So, like, did Marxism came first, like the theory of Marxism, like the Marxist anthropology, was it proposed before materialism or was it proposed after materialism? Because as you told earlier, and as I have seen, like as I've been reading, there are no clear demarcations between all of these theories. Because because somewhere or the other I am able to build this understanding that the sole purpose of trying to understand Marxist anthropology is so that we have a gateway of understanding materialism, because at the end of the day, that like Marxist anthropology somewhere or the other like leads us to materialism only. So which of these theories came first? Because then it would be easier for me to chronologically assemble in my mind that okay.
Marxism came way before anthropology or Marxist anthropology could be, even considered a reality. Okay, so Marxism alone as a theory came way before. Okay, around the same time when anthropology was being recognized as a discipline. Are you getting my point? So, fitting a chronology, Vasundhara, would be an oversimplification of theoretical framework of anything for that matter. If you try to fit all these theories chronologically, then I will say that you will end up becoming extremely confused. Rather, I would say that, and I'm not talking about only materialism, I'm talking about determinism. Okay, with regard to evolution of cultures, with regard to evolution of cultures in the society, Marxism theory was something that was taken briefly as an alternative. Okay, so it wasn't something, and even Marxist anthropology in no way talks about ecology only. Please understand that when we are looking at any problem, we try to look at it from various lenses, and those lenses can be the Marxist lens, the structuralist lens, the evolutionist lens. So it totally depends on which theory seems feasible for us to understand. Like when the pandemic began and people slowly became used to the idea of wearing a mask, suddenly there was a very good market for uh, air purifiers, microbial shields, that is like all the liquids and the sprays that people could use, and suddenly masks of various varieties, with filter, without filter, everything came. Okay, now this gave rise to something that we know as disaster capitalism. Okay, how capitalist forces took disaster and tragedy as an opportunity to enhance their business ambitions and aspirations. So, don't try to put a chronology on the theories that you are studying. That's a very faulty approach, I would suggest. Rather, just look at each philosophy and think what all theories are contributing and informing that philosophy. Okay, so when you are reading about evolutionism, does Marxism in any way contribute to evolutionism? It does. Does materialism get contributed? Because as I told you, materialism is also being informed by functionalism. Materialism is also being informed by economy. Materialism is also being informed by so many other things. Like, for that matter, how would you even bring together ecology with Marxism if you don't try to understand that ecology in Marxism is basically the resource? Okay, ecology or environment is just being looked at as a resource. So when you're talking about materialism, it is just materialism in terms of Marxism. Okay, so of course materialism came way before Marxism in ecology was introduced. But as far as placing a date on it is concerned, I suppose that Marxism would be considered fairly recent compared to materialism.
No, ma'am. Ma'am, like you just said just now, right? That materialism, like came, one sentence you just said, like just now, like materialism is understood from the point of view of Marxism, which gave rise to ecology. That was the sentence. That is the
No,
kind
no,
of
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that ecology is being informed by materialism also.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
being
Yes,
informed
ma'am.
by
Yes, ma'am.
Marxism also.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Ma'am, this is the kind of chronology I was talking about. Not exactly putting a date on it. I was not
Yes,
going to
but
put exactly.
that's what
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
telling you, that like last time when I was teaching you people structuralism came from linguistics, okay, languages.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
But
ma'am.
but at the same time, Clifford Geertz, an anthropologist, was also working on structuralism in terms of studying of mythology and folklore. Okay, so around the same time when structuralism was developing as a theory, he took few ideas and came up with binary oppositions idea in anthropology. Doesn't mean that structuralism in anthropology and structuralism in linguistics now can be obviously in linguistics it came first, but in anthropology it came later. But again, it's almost like natural selection. Which ideas of structuralism were handpicked by the anthropologist to suit their requirements? Okay, so it's like that. So what I'm trying to say is, just see that if ecology is being, like, even for that matter, materialism, Marxism, evolutionism, all these theories came way before ecology became of interest to anthropologists. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
it was not till 1950s. So please assume till 1950s all the theories, including the linguistic structuralism, will be having some influence on ecology, will be having,
Yes,
inevitable.
ma'am.
So
Yes.
that is why I was saying, just break down ecology into, you know biological understanding and social understanding. In social understanding, break it down to
Yes,
imperialism,
ma'am.
scientific and Arcadian approach, and then you can just simply look at various theories. Always know all of these theories are being informed by Marxism. All of these theories, they are all being informed. Don't think that there is just one, all of them. So that is why I wanted you people to understand what is Marxism and how this Marxism will lead to having an impact on all of the all of the social setup in the social norms of the society, the division of labor, like, I will tell you one very small example. We are almost done with the class. Very small example I want to tell you, that when it was agrarian economy, joint family was possible, and the moment land became, a resource that people were fighting for, this led to the breaking apart of joint family. And uh, who was the person who benefited from it? The women. The women had to then break away from their domestic roles and become financial supporters in a family where one single man's earning was not able to sustain all the family members. And therefore, we can say that while traditionally joint family seems like a very good idea, uh, its breakdown immensely contributed to the feminist movement. Are you getting my point? In India? So there are various threads. Again, feminist movement started way before that. Are you getting my point? But it also led to an alternative movement for women to break free from their traditional roles of being just the maternal providers and also become bread earners. Are you getting my point? So that is why I'm saying, uh, don't don't go into that. Just try to understand it like a story and see how many plots are there. That will be easier. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Any other questions? Yes, class. Any other questions?
No,
Ma'am, can
ma'am.
we ask some in the next class?
Of course you can. Of course
Ma'am,
you can.
just this one thing, ma'am. Substructure and superstructure was given by whom?
Uh, Substructure, superstructure, and several theorists have contributed, Georgian. Even Marvin Harris added one more layer, which was infrastructure.
Oh, okay, ma'am.
Okay, but again, everybody had their own definition of substructure and superstructure also. Okay, again, you can say that it was also popularized a lot by Karl Marx. Okay, before that, it was not that popular a theme, but it became even more popular when Karl Marx came into the picture. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, okay, so I'm stopping here. Maybe next class, you people can ask more questions. Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, okay.